I want to bring in the criminal defence attorney, Lance Fletcher, now from New York. Lance, thanks for your time as we're continuing to watch these pictures of Donald Trump's motorcade head back, presumably, to New York's LaGuardia Airport, where he'll fly home. What do you make of what's happened so far, Lance, and in particular what happened in the courtroom? What do we know?
Well, what you've seen so far is a pretty straightforward arraignment, and I think you can gather from what you've seen that just how bare bones this process is. The arraignment is not really about whether you're guilty or innocent. It's not really an opportunity for you to assert all your defenses. The judge doesn't decide if you're guilty or if you did the things that they say you did. You're presumed innocent. Mr. Trump is certainly presumed innocent at this point. Instead, it's just a process to read you the charges or tell you the things that you're alleged to have done. In fact, it goes back over the centuries to a time when a lot of defendants couldn't read, and so you'd have to have an arraignment in order to tell somebody what they're being accused of. So it's a very, very bare bones process.
So what are the charges, Lance? Can you go through them and how serious they are?
Well, from what I've heard so far, we're talking about 34E felonies. In New York, the most serious type of felony is a Class A felony, and the least serious is Class E. They relate to falsification of business records. Each one carries up to 4 years in jail, although jail is not mandatory. It would be a perfectly lawful sentence if, assuming if there's a conviction for the judge to sentence Mr. Trump with no jail time. So it's serious from a certain point of view in the sense that you could go to jail, that it's a felony and that has other consequences, but it's not the most serious type of felony that could be brought.
I'm certainly no expert when it comes to legal matters in the state of New York, Lance. That would be over to you. But it feels like from afar that this would be hard to stick. Am I wrong?
Hard to stick?
It would be hard to stick if for these felonies, these charges against Donald Trump. It feels like there's enough separation between, say, him and Michael Cohen to actually bring in the former president. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. This is going to be a challenging case for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. They're going to have to prove everything in the indictment. Getting an indictment just means that you have to prove to a grand jury that there's reasonable suspicion to believe that a particular person broke the law. But the DA's office now has to prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Specifically, they're going to have to get past certain predictable defenses. Were these payments something that came from Trump's personal funds in order to solve a personal problem? That could be one hurdle that they have to get past. They also have to prove how these payments were made, what these business records are. They have to show these records. So if they're talking about if the business records that were falsified were business records that were made with a bank, for example, they have to turn over those records and specify exactly which entries were falsified. And then for those entries, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Trump falsified them with the intent to hide the commission of another crime. So, for example, if they just prove that his intent was to defraud, that's just a misdemeanor, and he's not really charged with that. They have to prove that the intention went beyond just to defraud, but that it was an intent to hide some other crime. And to do that, they're basing that claim on an idea that he broke campaign finance laws, basically. So it's a complicated case from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and there are certain predictable defenses that I think they're going to have to get past.
Yeah, and no doubt time-consuming as well, Lance. I mean, how long can all of this take?
Well, that time is another issue. The statute of limitations normally is 5 years. I think they're going to argue that Mr. Trump was not in New York during some of the 5-year period when he was president in Washington, D.C. But time is still going to be an issue. I think they're going to I think Trump's attorneys will raise the issue of a statute of limitations, and just generally, a statute of limitations is a certain amount of time that you have to bring criminal action. And ordinarily, in this kind of case, that'll be 5 years. And then from this point on, there's something called speedy trial, which means that Mr. Trump his case has to be brought to trial within 6 months or 180 chargeable days. But those days, the clock on that basically starts and stops depending on certain other things that happen. But then also, there's going to be a lot of discovery here, and that means there could be tens of thousands of documents and all kinds of material that has to be turned over as part of discovery. and that could take an enormous amount of time. So this could take maybe a year or two to wind its way through the court system.
Well, just to add to the complexities, Lance, you've got an election campaign that's, a little over a year away, 18 months away. I mean, so let's say Donald Trump wins the election. What happens then?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're in uncharted territory with that. Just the simple fact of a conviction would not, as far as I understand, prevent Mr. Trump from being president. But there are other questions, such as if he's given any sort of jail time, how exactly would he be sworn in? Could he really take the oath of office if he's sitting in a jail cell? There are other arguments that I've heard that if you can't vote, then you can't be voted for. For example, if you're incarcerated, you can't vote. And so that there might be a legal argument that therefore you can't be voted for if you're serving a jail. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, this plays out.
So there's so much of this to work out. Now, I'll just wrap up here, Lance, but we're soon to hear from Alvin Bragg. What's expected to come from that when he starts speaking? Is he outlining the case? Is that where he makes his pitch?
I think so. When you're the prosecutor in a situation like this, you have the momentum right now. You just did the arraignment. You have the indictment. It's disclosed. And you really want to have confidence in your case. You want to stress that you believe in your case, that it's not just a question of bringing a case that could be won, that you really believe in it. And I think it would probably be to their advantage to outline some of the most important pieces of evidence that they have and plan to use against him.
Do we know if Trump's legal team have moved to dismiss any of the charges or any of the motions or anything of that nature, Lance?
Not yet. The case just started today. There's been a lot of discussion about the case before today, but the case legally just started today. And so from today going forward, his legal team will have an opportunity to dismiss. I expect they're going to challenge the venue. They may challenge on the statute of limitations. There could be other challenges, such as that there were problems with the grand jury or problems with the indictment. So I expect in the weeks to months to follow, we're going to see a lot of motions to dismiss.
All right. That's criminal defence attorney Lance Fletcher giving us his expertise live from New York. Lance, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.